Good morning. Buenos días. Welcome to this session, The Road Towards Smart Cities, Migrating from Traditional City Management to Smart Cities. We have, by the way, a very interesting panel today. It's going to be bilingual, so we're going to be switching from Spanish to English. For those of you who would like to have simultaneous translation, Channel 1 is for English, Channel 2 is for Spanish. We have here a set of mayors from very vibrant and modern cities in Latin America. We have Eduardo Paez, mayor of Rio de Janeiro. We have Federico Gutiérrez, mayor of Medellín, one of the most rising capitals in Colombia. We have Stephen Goldsmith, ex-mayor of Indianapolis, very interesting city also, and vice mayor of New York under Mayor Bloomberg. And to close, we have with us Luis Muñoz. Luis Muñoz is from the academic, is from the Universidad de Cantabria, and he has been the manager of the Smart Santander program. Santander is one of the cities in Spain that's probably done more far advances in smart cities. And to start with us, we have today here Mauricio Busquela. Mauricio is a senior specialist in our division of urban development, and he's also responsible in the Emerging Sustainable Cities program for the smart city component. Mauricio. You don't become a smart city overnight. It's a migration, it's a road that requires very careful planning and even better execution. So we listen from Mauricio in the next 10, 12 minutes, appeal on what the session will be about, and then each one of our panelists will have between 5 to 7 minutes of introduction, and hopefully we'll have some time for questions. Mauricio.
Okay, gracias. Buenos días. Good morning. Okay, thank you very much. In the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about three things. First, about the challenges that we are facing in Latin American Caribbean cities. Second, I'm going to talk about the book, The Road Towards Smart Cities, and show some examples. And then I'm going to talk about the transition of cities from traditional city model to the smart cities. Since 2011, we at the Inter-American Development Bank have been supporting Latin American and Caribbean cities in their transition to smart cities. The reason is that these cities in Latin America, as cities around the world, are facing very serious challenges that cannot be addressed or solved in a traditional way. They need to leverage technology, people, and process in this migration to the smart cities and solve their issues. As we know, more than 50% of the population in the world are living in the cities. And this is very, very growth in the last few years. Particularly in Latin America and the Caribbean, we have 80% of the people living in the cities. And if you look back in 1950, we had only 40% of the people in the cities. The major thing that happened is that in the last 65 years, we had a migration of people from the rural areas to the cities and also people that grow in the cities. So today we have 500 million people, but in the last 65 years, 430 million people moved to the cities. This very rapid and most cases not planned migration created several challenges for the cities, like citizen security, mobility, response to natural disasters and emergencies, energy efficiency, just to name a few. According to our public opinion surveys, in Latin America, citizen security is the major issue faced by the cities. It's the reason of the main concern among the people. And the reason of that is that in Latin America, we have many, many cities, but according to surveys, out of the 50 most dangerous cities in the world, 42 are in Latin America and Caribbean. The statistics also show us that while the average homicide rate in the world is 7 homicides for 100,000 people, in Latin America, we have 25 homicides. That's 3 times more than what we see around the globe. That's an urgent issue that we need some help. We need to fix it, leverage technology, people, and processes. When you look about mobility, that's another issue that we're facing in the large cities and also small cities. Today, an average worker might take 3 to 4 hours to move from home and work and back in large cities. We have so many cars in Latin America. Today, 60 million vehicles are in our streets. And the number is going to grow for 140 million in 10 years. Those vehicles are creating congestion, contamination, and most important, they are also causing a lot of fatalities. Last year in Latin America and Caribbean, we have 150,000 people got killed because of traffic accidents. And this could be by imprudence of the drivers, could be driver under influence, speeding and running the red lights. And if nothing is done, in 10 years, this number will triple. That's also a serious issue. When you look at Latin America and Caribbean, we are talking mainly about 26 countries in a huge territory, 500 million people in the cities. Our region is very vulnerable to natural disasters and climate change. What we're seeing lately is that we have more intense rains, droughts, floodings, and also landslides. As an example here, 2010, the city of Rio de Janeiro was hit by a very, very tough rain. In few hours, the city got a lot of water. Because many people also live in the areas like the hills and also in the city, we had flooding and landslides. In that day, more than dozens of people got killed and thousands got displaced. And more recently, in Haiti, we saw the Hurricane Matthew that crossed Haiti in a country that's very in the middle of the hurricane, and it got hit. More than 500 people got killed, and thousands got displaced. What we see here is that our cities are not well equipped to prepare and to respond to emergency, to adapt and mitigate the cause of natural disasters. What happens is that we have much more issues or challenges in their cities. We have energy efficiency, for example, in Central America and Caribbean. We have the management of natural resources, the water, the garbage. We have also lack of support for citizens in their participation, and also managing all the services for the citizen. And today, we cannot afford anymore to manage our cities in the traditional ways. And mayors have the really huge opportunity to take their cities, to lead their cities into a smart city and drive them to the smart city. And when we have these meetings with the mayors, they really understand, they really understand this opportunity. And they ask to us, okay, I got it. I think it's really very important, excuse me, to migrate to a smart city, but I still have some questions. First, please help me understand what's a smart city, what's not a smart city. We want to transform our cities into smart cities. What are the major components? What are the requirements? What are the costs? What are the benefits? Show me some examples of cities that have been transformed, migrate to a smart city. Show me how I can migrate to a smart city. Because of that, we at the IDB, we created this book, The Road Toward Smart Cities. And you can have like a paper in your seats that you can download that. It's available in Portuguese, in English, and Spanish. And also we have a joystick, a memory stick with it, so you can take it here. So this book, we took in consideration some things that we've been doing in the last years. First, the support we had in 13 projects in Latin America and Caribbean with our partners, Telefónica, Every, Cisco, Microsoft, and several others. So we have studies done for Valdivia in Chile, we have from João Pessoa in Brazil, we have from Vila Vicente in Colombia, and we have from Nassau in Bahamas, for example. 13 projects that we worked intensively with our partners. Then we also developed 10 case studies. We have case studies from Rio de Janeiro, Medellin, Santander, 4 cities in Korea, Tel Aviv, Singapore, Orlando, and so on. And then we also brought examples of cities around the world, 30 examples of cities that are in the phase of migrating to become smart cities. That's not a simple process. It is totally gradual, and we show them in 11 different topics, from citizen security, natural disasters, energy efficiency, and integrated centers. The book was also designed in a very simple way, very graphical, and very well written in the way that's not technical and aimed for non-technical people, so for mayors, for city officials, for academics, and entrepreneurs. And the book's divided in 4 main areas. the first block, where we discuss about the great urban challenges and also the concept of what's a smart city. We also see that there are so many definitions about smart city. In this one, we're going to present all the visions and also ours. We also talk about the architecture of the smart city. What are the components? What are the foundations of smart city? How much does it cost? What are the requirements? And then in the third block, we show the 30 examples of cities that are somehow migrating or have migrated to become smart cities. And in the fourth block, we talk about the roadmap and what the IDB is doing to help cities in Latin America and Caribbean to migrate and become smart cities. So let's see, in our definition, how we define smart cities. Smart cities is one that places people at the center of the development, incorporate the ICTs into urban management, and use these elements as tools to stimulate the design of an effective government that includes collaborative planning and citizen participation. By promoting integrated and sustainable development, smart cities become more innovative, competitive, attractive, and resilient, thus improving life. So very important point about people, urban management, effective government, citizen participation, and improving life. Let's look some examples here of cities that are already smart cities. For example, in Santander, Spain, they've been doing a project working with the European Commission, University of Cantabria, private sector, and they've been able to transform a city into a smart city. They have more than 20,000 sensors, connected sensors and cameras, and with this sensor, they are able to read the information in the city. They can sense the city in real time, they can analyze the data, and they can provide this data for city managers and also for citizens that are able to see what's the temperature, what's the contamination, what's the wind speed, where is my bus, where is my taxi, what's the noise level, and also access the connectivity. Medellin, Colombia is another example, and both of them are cases that we developed, where they have cameras that are able to regulate the traffic, cameras that are able to see the surveillance, the city in terms of criminality. They are able together to manage the traffic, to reduce congestions, and to reduce fatalities or incidents, and improve the safety in the streets. And Medellin does that, having like an intelligent mobility center. They work together with two other centers that are also managing the emergencies in the city and also the natural disasters with alert systems. Medellin was able to reduce the congestion by 35%, and reduce the fatalities in 35% since they installed that. So that's a very important point, because you are touching improvement of the traffic, reduction of congestion, that means CO2, and also fatalities. In New York, for example, they are mapping the crime in a GIS map, where you see the location of each crime. And these maps is also transformed, analyzed, and using heat maps to understand what are the areas of highest crime. And this has helped with true analytics and collaboration between agencies to understand what are the areas that they need more police, or they can shift the resources from one area to the other. And then we have the case of Rio de Janeiro, that's also part of our case study, where I have the Integrated Operating Center, where 30 more agencies, they work together to manage the city in real time. Traffic, natural disasters, big events, and so on. So from this center, they can understand what's happening in the city, they can plan ahead, and they can work individually by each agency, but most important, they can work together during a crisis. We mentioned that the citizens are the center of the urban development. What does it mean for us that? It seems that for us, the citizens are really the key, most important things in the city. They are the beneficiary of all these interventions. They receive information, and they are the one who the cities are trying to inform. But it's most important to mention that the cities has a very important role in the cities. They are the ones who provide the information back to improve the management, improve the cities as a whole. So they are not just a participant, they are also an active, a proactive participant in the changes of the city. In our analysis, we say, how much does it cost to build a smart city? For sure, the price are very variable, depends on many, many situations. But in our analysis and assessment, we say that a city of 500,000 people in an area around 160 square kilometers, 46 inhabitants per hectare, costs about $20 to $30 million, and a pilot could be around $7 million. And this city could have the backbone infrastructure for the connectivity, that's very important for the city, all the equipment, hardware and software, cameras, sensors, and also an integrated center. Okay, so let's look at the roadmap. How do we get to smart city? So based on our assessments and what we learned from our 10 case studies, the smart city starts with the leadership of one person, normally the mayor or the city official. If you believe you can, you can. If you believe you cannot, you're right. So that means that we need a leader to really own this change in the city, to set up a team, a multi-sector team with different agencies, private sector, public sector, everyone together engaging the citizen, understanding the problems, and doing a very, very intense diagnosis. In this diagnosis, we need to identify the technology, financial mechanisms that are very important, align with our partners, and define an action plan. In the action plan, it's important to consider the phased implementation, starting by a pilot, where you can try one thing at a time and keep making the evolution. What we mentioned about the city is that always in the beginning, we started as a holistic view of the city. And then we look at implementations step by step. Then you have metrics and continuity. What we hope is that smart cities will be a change in our region, and we'll be able to improve the life of the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mauricio. And talking about leaders, we have here 4 leaders with us. So, Eduardo, you run a very vibrant city. Hosted the World Cup, now hosted the Olympics.
Don't ever do it again.
Tell us, how did technology help you? Tell us your vision. Yeah, you can use the microphone here. Yeah.
So, okay, well, first, it's great to be here. I'll speak English. I think it's better than my Spanish. So there are 3 languages here. It's going to be English, Spanish, and Portugal. But I'll try to be in English, which is easier for me to speak. But let me try to make some points here. I think the big case of Rio, and there were some points that I think was said here in the presentation that are very important. I mean, the main thing that we had into becoming Rio a smart city. I don't know if we can already call Rio a smart city, but it's a much smarter city than it was
before
8 years ago. It's this operation center, and I mean when we talk about costs, I don't think it's that expensive, to get your city to become smart. I mean, usually the information, the technology is completely available, even if there's not, even if your city does not have so many cameras as you do in Medellin. I mean, I remember once when we opened the operation center, these guys were trying to, discuss what we're going to do with traffic. Rio had a traffic management system since the 90s. And I said, come on, let's use Waze. I mean, it's there, it's open data, it's collaborative, people participate in Waze, so let's use Waze. So Waze is one of, for nothing, it was for free, that did not cost at all for us, and was a big partnership. There's a big partnership between the city of Rio and Waze these days. We use it a lot. So the main thing that we did towards to make Rio a smart city was this operation center. And by the end of the day, it was just building a building and get together all the technology that the city was using even before. Obviously, when you get it together, when you get these 30 departments together, when you start people talking to each other. I mean, there's this example that you said, the Rio started its operation center when we had a big flood in 2010. Was my first year as mayor. And was during the night. I said, "Come on, what happens if everyone is asleep? What do city managers do? I mean, obviously there's the emergency services, but I mean, people don't act together. So the operations center is pretty much like that. And obviously, when you get the departments together, you start to bring new technology, you find new technology, use the technology that is there for you to use. So I think the first thing was this operation center. The second thing, which I think it's very important, is that city managers, we have to deal with this climate change. I mean, as you know, I chair C40, which is an institution of big cities that deal with climate change. And obviously, it's always good to copy other cities' ideas. Don't be ashamed of doing that. I did that a lot as mayor of Rio. Always when I saw a good idea in New York, in Medellin, in Santander, wherever, I would just go ahead and bring it to Rio. But the thing about dealing with climate change and the big things that we still face, obviously Rio, as a tropical city, has been facing mudslides for a long time now, but the fact that we need to build what we call resilient cities. So Rio has become a resilient city. We have a resilient plan because most of these problems we're not going to be able to solve it. I mean, it's impossible to solve the big floods of Rio. It's impossible to solve the problems of hurricanes. So the challenge of a city manager is how do you deal with that when it happens? Again, the city operation was very important, but for that, that's our, I would say, our center of resilience, the city operation center of Rio. And then you can start managing, dealing in the better way with the toughest situations. That's going to happen anyway in all of our cities, and you don't have the money to build the infrastructure to deal with the problem, or even there's not a solution to deal with the problem. And the third point I want to make here has to do with participation. I mean, participation has, it's amazing because this thing here, I think we're going back. The biggest issue that we face today is our system of representative democracy. I mean, everyone is dealing with that. This is happening in Arab countries, this is happening in Europe, this is happening in Brazil, this is happening in the United States. And I think technology and being a smart city, I mean, I would even say that we're going back to the Greek agora. I mean, this is the agora, you know, you can have some more connection with your citizens. They can be a little closer. It's not that they're going to decide everything, but some of the issues they can decide. And the beauty of technology is that it can be collaborative. So, well, ways what they do, people help the system to feed itself, you know, to give the information. So there's this issue about participation. I would call it, the other day I was given a name, was Polish digitocracy, something like that. I mean, cities are the main places where decisions are made. The digital can get you back to this Greek arrogance, to some direct democracy, and then you can have better decisions. So I think being a smart city has to do with that. You got to be resilient. You got to use lots of technology, get rid of paper, get rid of bureaucracy, make decisions fast, and you got to be collaborative. You got to be participative, and technology allows you to do that. So these are the points I wanted to make.
Good. Thank you. Federico, tú eres el alcalde de una de las ciudades más dinámicas de Colombia. Además, una ciudad que en 20 años ha tenido una transformación espectacular. De las cosas que yo recuerdo de Medellín es la forma como ustedes han podido hacer mucho para incluir, ¿no?, a la gente menos favorecida, ¿no?, e incluirla en todo el proceso de la ciudad. Cuéntanos.
Bueno, Juan, muy buenos días pues para todos. Pues a ver, Medellín es una ciudad que ha avanzado, que ha recorrido un camino largo, pero que todavía tiene un largo camino por recorrer. Todavía los niveles de desigualdad son altos, y cuando hablamos de eso y hablamos de ciudades inteligentes, pues yo diría que para que podamos tener ciudades inteligentes no es solo tener buena tecnología, sino tener ciudadanos inteligentes, que cada uno también tome la mejor decisión a través de las herramientas, a través de la tecnología y a través de la solución de los problemas. Si hay algo que ha impactado favorablemente en la ciudad en decisiones que se han tomado en anteriores gobiernos también, porque eso es lo primero que yo tengo que decir, y es que Medellín ha avanzado porque ha tenido buenos y sucesivos gobiernos, porque los recursos se han invertido donde se necesitan, porque se le ha dado prioridad al mapa social sobre el mapa político, y para nosotros ha sido fundamental avanzar en los sistemas de transporte. Yo ahorita veía, por ejemplo, la presentación sobre casos como los de Medellín, y es cierto que en un momento determinado la tecnología ayuda a solucionar problemas, pero llega un momento donde las realidades sociales y las realidades de las ciudades desbordan cualquier tipo de solución si no contamos con el elemento de fondo que es cada uno de los ciudadanos. Por ejemplo, el tema de movilidad. Seguir avanzando hoy en una cultura de solución de la movilidad individual a través del vehículo particular hace inviable las ciudades. Hoy nosotros tenemos zonas de la ciudad donde podemos construir intercambios viales y donde el impacto en términos de movilidad será mínimo y donde no se solucionarán los problemas. Hay que avanzar en los sistemas de transporte, es la única solución. Nosotros en Colombia tenemos, por ejemplo, dividido por estratificación, los estratos sociales, del 1 donde están la gente con menos recursos, con menos oportunidades, y el estrato 6 donde hay más riqueza. El estrato 1, 2 y 3 concentra el 80% de la población. Eso es para entender un poco esas realidades sociales que todavía tenemos. Quien más paga para moverse es quien menos tiene, quien más gasta tiempo para moverse en nuestras ciudades es quien menos tiene. Si avanzamos realmente en esto, la ciudad va a poder tomar decisiones, pero esa forma de llegar a través del sistema de transporte público a las zonas más alejadas de la ciudad, a las zonas donde existe más vulnerabilidad. Uno va a una ciudad, por ejemplo, como Río, que la ciudad de Río es muy linda, Eduardo, y es muy parecida a Medellín. Es muy parecida a Medellín. Uno mira, por ejemplo, la composición urbana, cómo fueron creciendo nuestras ciudades desde la década de los 70, de los 80, esa migración del campo a las ciudades y cómo se van asentando, por ejemplo, sin ningún tipo de urbanismo, sin coberturas de servicios públicos y con altos niveles de vulnerabilidad y riesgo. Eso hace que nosotros tengamos que llegar a través de sistemas de transporte a organizar las diferentes zonas, reubicación de viviendas, pero alrededor del sistema de transporte. Es lo que pasó con el Metrocable. Así como yo llegué a conocer el Metrocable en la zona de ustedes de Complejo Alemão y todo esto, podemos compartir muchas experiencias, pero yo estoy convencido que si no avanzamos hoy en soluciones reales, en términos de movilidad sostenible, avanzar para que los ciudadanos puedan acceder de manera real y efectiva a sistemas integrados donde existan tarifas únicas, donde existan integración física y tarifaria, nuestras ciudades no van a poder seguir avanzando. Hay una realidad y que va muy ligada a estos fenómenos y es el tema de la seguridad. No más hace unas décadas Medellín era una ciudad absolutamente inviable. ¿Quién iba a querer invertir en Medellín? ¿Quién iba a tener como caso de estudio a Medellín o caso de éxito siendo la ciudad más violenta del mundo? Llegamos a tener 381 homicidios por cada 100.000 habitantes. Tú lo mostrabas ahorita en la presentación, hoy estamos en una tasa aproximadamente de los 20 homicidios por cada 100.000 habitantes y tenemos que seguir disminuyendo. En esta meta que tenemos estos 4 años es seguir bajando. Aportar en términos de medio ambiente, de sostenibilidad. Cuando tú miras, por ejemplo, quiénes son los más afectados en términos de mala calidad del aire, son especialmente los niños entre los 0 y los 5 años y los adultos mayores. ¿Pero de dónde? De los estratos más bajos de la población. O sea, cuando hablamos de movilidad solucionamos muchos problemas sociales en términos de calidad del aire, en términos de cómo nos desplazamos en la ciudad, de integración, de competitividad y de mejorar la calidad de vida de la gente. Y este tema de seguridad, cuando uno muestra toda la georreferenciación en el mapa de qué pasa donde hay más déficit de espacio público, donde hay menores coberturas en temas de salud, de educación, es donde tienen los más altos niveles e índices de criminalidad. Yo diría que el gran reto de América Latina hoy no está solo concentrado en el tema de movilidad como muchas veces hemos creído. Si hoy se marca una encuesta, como lo mostrabas, en todas las ciudades de América Latina, la gran prioridad hoy es la seguridad, es la seguridad. ¿Por qué? Porque el ciudadano necesita sentirse seguro y dejar la discusión si la seguridad es de izquierda o derecha, o que si solo se hacen acciones de control o acciones coercitivas del Estado, o que si solo se hace inversión social. Quien hace una acción solo de inversión social donde hay estructuras criminales, pero no lleva la fuerza del Estado, no va a tener consecuencias positivas. Quien lleva solo la fuerza del Estado y no lleva la inversión social, tampoco va a lograr. El concepto de seguridad integral cada vez tiene que ser mayor y tenemos que entender que tenemos que proteger a los ciudadanos. Eso es uno de los elementos más importantes hoy. Yo veo con mucha preocupación lo que viene pasando en un fenómeno que nació realmente en ciudades como Medellín, que se ha multiplicado en ciudades como Río, que hoy lo ves en ciudades de Argentina. El caso de Rosario, por ejemplo, es un caso complejo y es por qué las ciudades tienen que esperar a tocar fondo como lo hicimos nosotros para tomar decisiones. Yo lo decía muchas veces en Argentina y en México, ¿por qué tienen que esperar a vivir lo que vivimos nosotros para tomar sus propias decisiones? Yo pienso que hay un tema de fondo, tenemos que mejorar, tenemos herramientas de tecnología que nos ayudan. Si hay algo que a nosotros nos sirve en términos de ciudades inteligentes, de smart cities y todo este tema para tomar la decisión es la información. El sistema de información de seguridad que tenemos en Medellín, Juan, son de los sistemas que a nosotros nos permiten conocer con detalle, minuto a minuto, qué pasa en cualquier rincón de la ciudad, tener zonas o segmentos priorizados para determinar las intervenciones. O sea que sí es posible, sí sirve, pero creo que falta un elemento muy poderoso y no es que las administraciones municipales contemos entonces con buena tecnología, sino cómo ponemos esa tecnología al servicio del ciudadano. Cada vez el ciudadano cómo aprende también a leer esa información, cómo él puede también tomar su propia decisión en términos de movilidad, en términos de seguridad y que la ciudad pueda seguir avanzando. Sí hemos avanzado, falta mucho, pero yo vuelvo y digo, tenemos por ejemplo el ejemplo donde mostrábamos cómo el Centro de Control de Tránsito en un momento determinado mostraba reducciones del 44% de la congestión. Hoy no es el caso. Hoy se le pregunta a un ciudadano si realmente él cree que ese centro de control lo beneficia y el ciudadano va a decir, primero, no sabía que hay centro de control y segundo, el centro de control hoy no me beneficia porque los tacos son impresionantes. ¿Pero por qué? Porque ya hoy hemos superado la capacidad de soporte, porque nuestras ciudades, si seguimos creciendo de esa forma, no vamos a poder seguir avanzando. La solución, sistema integrado de transporte, sistemas de transporte no motorizados, la apuesta a la bicicleta, yo lo he contado, hoy tenemos 39 kilómetros de ciclorruta, un esfuerzo de 15 años de gobierno, vamos a construir 80, o sea, el doble de lo que hoy tenemos, es ir avanzando en la realidad, ciudades para la gente. Creo que esas son realmente las ciudades inteligentes.
Muchísimas gracias, Federico. Stephen, you want to use the...
I could do it from here if I could get the...
Oh, good for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so you've been 2 terms in Indianapolis, a very important city in the Midwest, and 1 term with Mayor Bloomberg in New York. I'm sure you have a lot to tell us about the smart cities.
I've been at it for a while, and I've probably made more mistakes than the rest of the mayors up here, I'll say that for sure. Which direction? That direction? That direction? Yeah. So I'm just going to take a few minutes and just not go through these slides in any detail, but just kind of begin to look at them in the following way, right? So everybody in the room knows it because you're here, but I think as we talk about smart cities, it's interesting to think about all of the changes that have occurred. When I stopped being deputy mayor for Mike Bloomberg 5+ years ago, there have been massive changes even in the last 5 years. And if we think about bringing those together, whether it's the mobility tools that our workers have, cloud computing, which allows cities of all sizes to have access to the best in class, the data mining technologies, which allow us to extract data from what previously were disconnected legacy systems, the sensors that are, whether Internet of Things or whether they're citizens walking around with their own phones and they're being sensors, all of those activities, when they come together, dramatically change the way the government works. And so, without running through all these, let me just make 2 quick points. One, I think the 2 previous speakers are an example of the top block, right? Data does not work without executive leadership, and the integration and use of data has to be driven from the top and organized from the top. That doesn't mean it shouldn't be also networked. It doesn't mean it shouldn't also be broad-based, but it has to start at the top, and both of those, and there's various different ways to kind of put those things together. When I was deputy mayor in New York, we tried to create a data analytics center in the mayor's office, right? It had branches in the agencies, but to integrate the data, and as everyone knows, right, the problem and the opportunity of government is that government's organized vertically, but people live horizontally, right? So they don't live in the transportation department or the parks department, and the big insights in government are using data across those verticals. So now if we look at smart cities, let me just say this is a little bit, I prefer to think of myself as a mayor than a professor, but this is a little professorial, I'm afraid. But, you know, if we think about the movement from old legacy to smart city, I think it has the following characteristics, right? We have a transaction-based system, right, where our IT systems process transactions. But hidden and locked in those systems is lots of knowledge that would inform our policies. We today, in many cities around the U.S., our definition of performance is activity-based measurement, and it's not an outcome-based measurement. And now that we have data that can go across the agencies, we can actually pay attention to outcomes. We react instead of predict, right? When I was in New York City, the fire inspectors inspected several 100,000 buildings a year in some sort of order, but the order wasn't order was changed to say, why don't we inspect the buildings in the order in which the data shows them they're most likely to result in a fire if there's a violation. So reactive to predictive, and how much discretion can we give our employees now that we have more data that's available to them? And as both of the previous mayors mentioned, the issue here is not just the big data that's in the enterprise. The reason I've drawn those three circles like that is that we think that, and the IADB proposal manual suggests this, that true value is when you have vision, you have the information that comes from the social media and the citizens and the smartphone that the mayor mentioned, and you have the operations data. When they come together, they produce public value. You can't produce public value just by a number of bureaucrats looking at data without engaging the citizens about what's in their community's best interest. And the same would be true in the way you monitor NGOs and the way you participate with contractors. So let me just slow down for a second. This is an activity we did in Indiana. The recent governor, now actually the vice president-elect, did it in Indiana. And the goal here is the following, right? So we have in the old forms of government a sense of accountability that says our definition of accountability is when our employees follow the rules. It's not when our employees solve problems, it's when our employees follow the rules. And so that comes from a system where we were fearful that if employees had discretion, that they might abuse that discretion either corruptly or negligently. But now, this is a child welfare worker, the toughest job in state government in the U.S., the worker that goes into a troubled home to decide whether to remove a child in situations of abuse. And previously, she just had pieces of paper. And then she had a tablet. But in the tablet was lots of information. But now in that tablet, right, is information that comes from the guardian, from the school, from the police, from the medical attention, from the counselor. But that information is just not loaded into the tablet. It's actually organized with a decision support system. So the boy has a broken left arm. The situation will tell her whether the brothers have a broken right arm or whether the child appeared in school or the like. So the purpose of this is to say we can massively make our employees more productive in a smart city situation if we turn all the information into digital information, we mine that information, we organize that information, and we use it as decision support systems for employees to do their work. And this is just another example, an earlier one. I wrote a book about a year or two ago called The Responsive City, which you should all go buy. But we featured Boston in this, and that was twofold. Boston was the first city in the U.S. to use apps to report city problems. But more importantly, now it seems to me, is the opportunity for the city worker to send the picture and the text back to the citizen who made the complaint saying, my name's Joe, I fixed your pothole, right? So this creates kind of right? Many of our citizens don't have trust in their government, and many of our employees are frustrated because they don't feel they're appreciated by their citizens. So why don't we create an information loop where we actually are responding with a person who actually solved the problem, and that's the reason this is in there. This is just another quick example, and I'm almost finished. So in Chicago, they're using predictive information coupled with, as in San Francisco, Yelp information to reorder the restaurants that are inspected by the health inspectors. So instead of going to restaurant A and restaurant B and restaurant C, identify the restaurants that have had previous problems, identify the restaurants where there is some Yelp comment about I got sick last night at the restaurant, reorganize the path of the inspectors. So let's be predictive, let's preempt the problems and listen to the social media as well. And just finally, we're on a verge of a number of breakthroughs here that are quite promising, right? So I've been involved in a number of city call centers, what we call in the U.S. 311 centers, contact centers for a long time. You know, why do we really wait for a citizen to report a street light out or a pothole out when my guess is in Santander, the street light says I'm about to burn out, come fix me before it burns out. right? So our idea of citizen responsiveness is that we wait until we created a problem and then have our citizens call and say there's a problem, come fix it, is going to be outdated in an Internet of Things world where the things will talk to the city government. City government will organize its responses in order to accomplish those. So, and we'll be learning and taking information from it, whether it's in smart lighting or otherwise. And then finally, this is just an example of taking the whole sensor platform. This is the Link NYC. Some of you may have heard about New York City's taking 10,000 phone booths and turning them into smart links. These provide free citywide gigabit access. There's sensors on top of them. They provide, many of our citizens, our poor citizens, do have smartphones. They just can't afford the data plan. So this is a free data opportunity for really everybody that lives in the U.S. So just in conclusion, massive changes that will affect the way citizens engage, changes that affect the way the employees react, changes that will relate to how we predict problems in advance, all of which is possible by the data, none of which is possible without mayoral leadership such as represented here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Luis, Santander es posible de las mejores alumnas de la Red de Ciudades Inteligentes Española. Es una ciudad que hemos venido siguiendo desde hace 4 años. Ustedes en la Universidad de Cantabria han liderado el proceso del Smart Santander, que es un poco el programa, es como la planificación que ha vivido allí para llevar a la ciudad donde está. ¿Qué nos puedes decir? Lo que quieras.
There are many issues that already have been addressed during the previous speeches. So I will try just to focus on those, perhaps on 2 or 3 issues that might be a little bit novel compared to what has been said, based on the last 7 years evolution on the smart city domain. So the first point, let's say, in terms of a practical example of how we behave in Santander in the last 9 years, how was the process, which was the transition process. So the first important issue that already has been said is it's important that there is a clear political leadership in the city that has a vision on which is the future that might be expected in the city and that he or she might expect from the city. So this is the first point. But this is not enough at all. So in Santander at that moment, I remember that was in year 2009, we organized a conference, an international conference with the European Commission, discussing the different projects that were supported by the European Commission. And in one of the discussions that we had, we say, we envisage that there is an important gap in terms of experimental facilities addressing Internet of Things. I am talking about 7 years ago, once Internet of Things was just not well known. So the idea at that moment, and that was the lead coming from the university, was, okay, let's try to formulate a proposal, a project, an idea, supported by the municipality that at that moment was planning or was setting up the strategic plan, a project addressing the deployment of a massive IoT infrastructure, which should have a twofold objective. The first one, and this is important, the first one is to support the research on top of such facility. Research. Research for what? Research for creating some kind of living lab. Second point, by the fact that we are deploying an infrastructure in the city, let's reuse such infrastructure for supporting advanced services on top of the infrastructure. And that was the moment that when we established the relationship, the tight relationship with the municipality, saying, okay, if you have a plan here which is based on a new technology, on a new productive model, based on knowledge, based on technology, here we have an opportunity. And that was the I would say, the first point. So this has been said in a certain extent, okay, so the leadership is important. It's important in that sense, perhaps, to have research entities that might lead those initiatives. And then, of course, it's important to have the opportunity, as it was the case of the European Commission, for funding a project at that moment. Then the second important issue. the collaboration, the public-private collaboration. This is also an important issue that is discussed, but perhaps it is not clear. It is not clearly addressed on how this might be, let's say, be practical in the city. So what we did is, okay, we have that was in 2011. We have consolidated an infrastructure, an IoT infrastructure that we believe that is a unique infrastructure at that moment. We postulated the potential reuse of the infrastructure by third parties, and those third parties, beyond the citizens, also should be the urban utilities, for example, and any kind of private entity wishing to operate on top of such innovative infrastructure. So that was the very beginning in 2011, 2012, and we succeed to attract urban utilities, like this is the case of, for example, Ferrovial, and then we set up a lab, which is called Santander City Lab, on top of which we try to figure out how to improve the service provision of the waste management service in the city. Based on the data that we gather from the sensors deployed in the containers, in the bins, based on the environmental conditions like rain, traffic, etc., we have just recently achieved a quite novel result in the sense that so we are able to reduce by 30% the expenses linked to the waste management based on the data collection and based on the predictive analysis, and this is important, based on the predictive analysis that we are able to carry out based on the data, based on the sensors that provide those data, based on the uses of the citizens when it is raining, when there is traffic jam, when there is an accident, etc., etc. But also in that respect, also we have a very nice example linked to the street lighting. So that was also around 2011, and in Santander, which it was in the past, a city which it was raining quite a lot. It's not the case now, but in the past. So we have quite a lot of parks with big surfaces, and in those surfaces we have lamps, as you can imagine, and we were thinking, guys, when it is raining, the probability that people is around the park is quite low. One of the first areas to try to reduce light intensity might be the parks. So we, from the university, jointly with the municipality, we tested one of the first systems, working very, very basic system, working with radar in Ka band, detecting pedestrian movement, and we were adjusting the light intensity based on the presence of pedestrians. And we demonstrated at that time that without any kind of new technology, without LED, etc., we were able to reduce by a 30% the energy consumption. So that was the basis, that was the seed for 2 years later that the municipality presented a public tender for street lighting, and that gave us the opportunity also once more to set up and to demonstrate the collaboration between the public and private sector. So the company, the bidding company, now is going to replace the 24,000 bulbs in the city by LED technology, using the pedestrian detection, aiming at reducing beyond the LED technology with, let's say, the detection of pedestrians. So this is a second nice example of how this private-public collaboration also helps in making this transition between the legacy city and the smart city. And the third component that I want to bring is the role of the citizens. And here I think that we might bring a quite innovative, not quite innovative, but perhaps an innovative idea. So always we are discussing about the role of the citizen. The citizen is one of the priorities for the city officials, for the mayors, for the city managers. However, it's not easy to involve the citizen. Why? Because there is this digital gap, which in a certain extent creates some kind of fear by the citizens towards the new technology. So what we are postulating now in the city is to deploy what we call an organic city facility. Organic city facility because envisages the organic growth of the city by the citizens. So this facility is what I call a facility for dummies, so for people with no skills at all in terms of ICT technology, very intuitive, very easy to work, very easy to create new applications, very easy to use the data coming from the open data, coming from the firewall, coming from the different platforms that we have integrated, aiming at conceiving new applications, new services that might be aligned with the city challenges or not. So what we envision, and with this I finish the presentation, what we envision is that the city managers, the city officials, will offer this facility as an additional vertical, like the street lighting, the waste management, for making the city manage, at least in terms of conceiving new applications by the citizens. In the future, in the medium term, long term, this facility, once more, will be managed, owned, etc., by the typical urban utilities. That's all from my side.
Thank you,
so
Luis.
much.
It's been a great panel. We have very few time left, so I want to make one more question per each panelist. Please, short answers, okay? Eduardo, I know you're not running again, but if you had 4 more years in Rio, what will be the roadmap towards migrating to more smarter city that you will design or that you will push?
Well, first thing, I would not do the Olympics and the World Cup again. That's a good advice. Second thing, I can say things here, and the next mayor will be paying attention so he can learn a little bit. Just kidding. But I mean, I would go. Let's do it. I would go cheap. What do I mean by that? I mean, Rio has went through great transformation the past 8 years. Lots of infrastructure. And there was an amazing opportunity, as Barcelona did with the Olympics. It changed completely the city. So we used a lot the games, as a good excuse to get things done in Rio. But again, when we in my first talk here, when we talked a little bit about the price of becoming a smart city. I mean, I think from all the presentations here, what you can see is you can make great changes without spending too much money. I mean, information is available, things are there. I just need to use it well. So I would invest a lot in that. I invest my time a lot in that. Getting better services without spending much more money. I mean, the services are already there. We need to make it better. We need to make it more predictable, more intelligent, smarter by the end of the day.
Good. Thank you, Eduardo. Federico, ha habido una gran transformación en Medellín y estoy de acuerdo. Y queda otra gran transformación todavía por hacer. ¿Dónde ves ahí el rol del sector privado? ¿Cómo te va a ayudar a esa gran transformación?
Bueno, pues justamente esa transformación se ha dado es porque ha existido una gran participación del sector privado. Y eso es una de esas particularidades que uno encuentra en Medellín. Por ejemplo, si hay algo valioso para nosotros, es el famoso Comité Empresa Universidad Estado. Funciona como un relojito, funciona perfecto. Los empresarios más importantes de la ciudad, no solo pensando en la economía de sus empresas y sus lugares, sino pensando en la ciudad. Y es fundamental. Y las universidades. Y si hay algo que tiene que servir del sector privado, es entender cuál es el rol de nosotros como sector público, de generar las condiciones para que el sector privado invierta en la solución de aquellas problemáticas de ciudad, y son las alianzas público-privadas, las APPs. Pero ¿qué necesitamos nosotros? Herramientas reales para poder llevarlas a cabo. Cuando tú miras, por ejemplo, un país como el nuestro, que es lo que hablamos tanto en la ONU, sobre el tema de ONU Hábitat, y es cuál es el rol de las ciudades, cómo las ciudades cada vez debemos tener mayor independencia y mayor autonomía, entendiendo que tenemos grandes responsabilidades. Hoy el 80% de la población urbana en América Latina vive en las ciudades. Esa será la proyección para el 2030 para el mundo, pero hoy en América Latina es la realidad. En 2030 estaremos en 85%. pero no tenemos todas las herramientas locales. Entonces yo pienso que va a jugar un papel fundamental y el sector privado en Medellín está comprometido. Vemos empresarios, Juan, que se comprometen con la ciudad y que ayudan a dar las diferentes soluciones.
Gracias, Federico. Stephen, on your experience in both Indianapolis and New York, a lot of these smart cities investments can be financed by monetizing the efficiency gains. No? So when you change the lights to LED on the savings in energy, if you could monetize that, you could pay for it. What are the 3 sectors that you would recommend where efficiency gains are easier to structure and monetize?
Well, your question is an excellent one because there are areas where the savings are immediate and they'll pay for the technology, right? So street lighting is a great example. Parking is an excellent example where the increase in revenues just from a better administered system will produce more. Using data to identify people who are not paying their taxes or the right amount of taxes is a way to get more revenue. Now, after that, it becomes some of the even more important aspects are more difficult to monetize. So let's say that an investment in data will allow you to be more effective in deciding which children to remove from the home or how to intervene in the area of a particular disease. Those are more complicated and they pay off in the long run, but not in the short run, right? So they're more. So then you have to make the argument as a mayor: invest now, and we'll save money long term. And then, lastly, of course, is a more complicated but really fascinating issue, which is if the job of a mayor is mobility, it's not roads, it's not taxis, it's not Uber, it's not transit, it's mobility. And if the use of data allows mobility to occur better without more asphalt, more concrete, more hardware, that's an immediate payoff, but it's a more complicated payoff in terms of kind of the way you budget.
Thank you, Stephen. Luis, Smart Santander is already in mobility traffic, it's already on solid waste, sanitation, now on street lighting. What is the next one? Enlighten us.
Yeah. So I think that there are two main directions that I would like to see in the forthcoming years. One is really to implement the concept of autonomous city. Autonomous in the sense that the city behaves or evolves or transients from a reactive behavior towards a fully predictive one. So this is the reason why concepts like machine learning, data aggregation, data fusion, etc., will play a key role. The second point is concerning the role that next generation internet will play in making the city much more livable for the citizens. So the fact that we are close to the implementation, the real implementation of what is called the tactile internet, the fact that the contextual information around the user will be a reality, that will help in a seamless way to take decisions, as if each citizen would have some kind of control center, having the whole view of the city. Those I think will be two of the key pillars in the, let's say, 5-10 years coming from now.
Thank you, Luis. Now, because of the time we lost on the electricity cutoff, perhaps time for 1 or 2 questions from the public. Do we have microphones for the public? Questions? It's a gentleman in the middle. Thank you. Oh, he has to stand up and go. Short questions. You can address it to anyone or to the panel in general.
Hello. Hi. My name is Danilo. I'm from Brazil, and I'm an MBA student from IESE. And my question is, since we spoke about the dependence on the leadership in implementing all these technologies and getting cities to be smarter, how can we as citizens make sure that when leadership changes, we won't lose all this investment and we will keep improving our cities?
Thank you. Anyone wants to Maybe because he's a Brazilian student.
And I'm changing
Your
now,
host.
so.
Okay.
Well, let me try to answer that. I mean, this is a problem that governments and the people face since we had no technology. I mean, so this is always going to be a issue. Well, so I think citizen participation, citizen empowerment is the thing that guarantees that. And again, technology helps a lot into that. The digital world helps a lot into that. So, I mean, this is accountability, this is citizen participation, this is the only way to get things going, at least the good things keep moving.
Thank you.
Any other question? Round of applause for our panelists. Been very good. Excellent.